Good evening, folks. I know it's been a minute since we've done like an actual care video, but here's one. This is on Nocticola species, Malaysia. This is another micro roach. This one from Malaysia. The other ones I've showcased on this channel are minutissima, the little Kenyan roach from Kenya, obviously, and schwarzi from ant nests in Arizona. These, pretty much nothing is known about their natural history. The guy who imported them doesn't even really know much other than that they're from Malaysia. But yeah, this, believe it or not, is an actually even smaller than schwarzi, which previously held the record for smallest roach in the hobby. These guys are even smaller, believe it or not. And their setup is pretty much identical to schwarzi. At least I keep them pretty much the same. The only thing I would do slightly differently for these guys is I just misted them so it looks kind of damp, but I don't normally keep them quite this damp. This is my side culture. I have a main one that's up in my other building. Here's some. They really like the magnolia. But they get in there. They're real tiny. But I'm going to show you a size comparison in a little bit with a macro lens and kind of give you a close-up. Like I said, their care pretty much identical to schwarzi. Make sure they have at least some amount of moisture, underneath the decor. It doesn't have to be really, really humid everywhere in the enclosure. They do like rotten wood and rotting leaves. That seems to be the bulk of their diet. They don't really touch the other food as much as schwarzi or other roaches do. They tend to just kind of like the detritus and leaf litter. Not to say that they won't eat other stuff, but they mainly eat that. So it's somewhat important. Their climbing ability. So schwarzi, the adult males are the only ones that can climb, and even though they do climb, they do it fairly poorly. Just as long as the glass that you have them on is clean and not like scratched up or covered in like dust or debris, pretty much any roach can climb up that. At least any roach that size. So you want to make sure your glass and stuff is clean for schwarzi. But these Nocticola species, they're even worse at climbing. None of them can climb. Even I've tried it on scratched up and somewhat dirty glass. They're terrible at it. I do recommend keeping your glass and stuff clean just because, but really bad at climbing. So I'm going to switch over to my macro lens and I will kind of show you a little look at them. So for you folks not from the United States, just a little information. The dime piece, our 10-cent piece, is actually the smallest coin that we have. It's, believe it or not, smaller than the 1-cent coin. Why? I don't know. Nobody can really explain to me that. Little springtail over there. But that's a Nocticola species, full grown, right next to a dime piece. And I have a schwarzi here as well. And hold on. Oop. A lot of glare. Trying to fix the fan. But yeah, that is a schwarzi. I'm gonna put the macro lens on now. So there you have it. Nocticola species, full grown, on a dime. And there's a little tiny springtail for kind of a rough comparison. I'm going to get stills later on, or at least attempt to get stills. I've gotten a really nice picture of a schwarzi on a penny before. I'm going to try and kind of replicate that here with a dime. May even retake with a dime for this guy, just to kind of give you guys an updated comparison that's more accurate. That way you have a side-by-side with the exact same size tools, or, coins. But yeah, very small. As far as reproduction goes, I find that the Nocticola species actually do better for me. I don't know why. They just do. I think Brandon has said the same thing. For those of you who don't know, I've mentioned Brandon on the channel before. Really sweet guy who's also kind of the guy for roaches these days, in my opinion. There's a couple others, but Brandon is awesome. Yeah, nice little up close. Compsodes are definitely more inclined to run around and stuff. So maybe keep that in mind. Neither of these are really burrowing roaches, so if you're going to use them as feeders, you don't really have to worry about them getting all burrowed down. But yeah, they are very, very tiny roaches. That's kind of the gist of the video. We'll go back to their enclosure right now. So this is like the equivalent of like a 3 or 5 gallon, something like that. You can keep them in smaller, you can keep them in bigger. I just prefer smaller just because they don't really need the space. They're very, very tiny. Just slug in here. People ask me about keeping them enclosed. Like I said, since they can't climb, it's really not that big of a deal. Honestly, I would, like people ask me, can I just leave the lid off? I wouldn't leave the lid off just because other spiders and other stuff will come in and the spiders will wipe these things out. They love them. So definitely keep a lid on these with some mesh that will at least keep out spiders. I've told you guys about micro mesh before and how much I like it. You can use that stuff. If you're super worried about them getting out, even though they're pretty terrible climbers, or if you've got dirty glass, or you have a tendency, if you have hard water, and when you mist, you get hard water stains, maybe use some bug barrier or something like that, or just use vinegar to keep the glass clean. Either way works. Temperature for these guys, I keep them in like the higher range of the 80s. They could be kept cooler. It'll just slow down their reproduction a little bit. Same with any other roach. Yeah, overall pretty easy. A good little like beginner's tip for these is I would recommend your substrate doesn't need to be super super deep, just so that way just enough so that way it won't dry out in between waterings how often it is you decide to do that. They kind of like layers of stuff, so like layers of leaves and wood, and then leaves and wood, and they'll get up all in the cracks and inhabit very small spaces. You'll look at an enclosure and you'll lift up a couple things. You're like, oh, there's not that many in here, but there's a lot. A lot can fit in a very small amount of space. So I think these are going to change up the game a little bit. Just tweak breeding to be a little bit more optimal. This is currently the setup I have them in, but I'm going to experiment with some more like breeder type setups, like what people do with dubias and stuff. I'm going to experiment with that. And see if they can be raised on like, a pretty simple like cardboard setup, standard feeder roach setup. And maybe there'll be something to that, but we shall see. Flick this guy off my finger. But yeah, super super simple roach. Highly recommend, and I'll show you a look at them one last time. Very clumsy. This one somehow just tripped all on its own and can't get back on its feet. Oh wait, this might be a perfect opportunity for... No, I'm hoping it kind of doesn't, so I can get this still. Hold on, I'm going to try and get it. So I couldn't pass up the opportunity, sorry for the weird cuts. But here's a size comparison between the two of them on a dime. Overall, you wouldn't think that the difference is that much, but like when you're on such a small scale, I would say the Nocticola are like 25% smaller, if I had to guess. It's not like I can weigh something this small. But yeah. Stepped on the macro for even more effect. It's funny, with roaches this small, like if you were to use this type of macro on almost any other animals, it would show a lot more detail, but these guys are so small. But yeah, get back to their enclosure in a second. They'll be fine once they warm up. Yeah, you can see they're starting to warm up. But yeah, very cool, very easy roaches to keep. On the smaller side, which is good. You can breed thousands of these in the space that, of like the size of a shoebox basically, if not smaller. So yeah, that's kind of them. Their enclosure, uber simple. I have a layer, maybe like a ½ inch to 1 inch deep of like a mixture of compost and various like flake stuff like wood and leaf flake, and then I have actual like hardwoods and hardwood leaves on top of that, all at varying levels of decay. And that's pretty much all you need for these guys. I also put a little bit of sphagnum moss in there that I kind of put at the bottom for like moisture pockets, but not super duper necessary. For spare foods, I feed them like carrots, squash, a little bit of cat or dog food on occasion, but they don't seem to touch it nearly as much as the schwarzi do. Why that is, I don't know. I guess they just prefer the leaves and the wood, but they seem to reproduce just fine, if not faster, even though they're not eating very, like, what we would consider calorie-dense foods. Kind of got to remember that roaches are basically just termites, so they can eat wood pretty well, I guess. But yeah, that has been the care on these guys. Like I said, very similar to Comso schwarzi. You're not going to really have too many differences with these. I would keep these a little bit on the more humid side with more rotting wood, but otherwise it's more or less the same. But yeah, exciting new things in the world of microfeeders. No longer will we have to deal with pinhead crickets and fruit flies and stuff. Hopefully once we really get these going at like an industrial level, we can market them elsewhere. You know, they're non-climbing. They would make a good cleanup crew for a bioactive setup, I think, because they're eating all sorts of random stuff. But, you know, that remains to be tested. I'm going to test these in bioactive enclosures like I do a lot of my other animals, and I'll give some updates on that. But yeah, like, comment, share, subscribe for more roach stuff. I'm probably going to do some update videos, maybe do an update on my, what should we call it, my extinct roaches. Might do a care guide on Princessia van Werbecky, the vibrant hisser roach. What else? There's a bunch of stuff I could do. But yeah, like, comment, share, subscribe. See you next time.